This is Jesse. He fell in love with Cassidy.
I'm a proud trans woman.
A common misconception people often hold is the belief that gender is equal to biological sex. This is simply not the case. Gender is the cultural roles one adopts that is often representative of their biological sex.
To even suggest such a thing, oh, there's nothing sexual about this. It's like, yeah, right. You're dressing up in lingerie before your mirror at home, tucking your dick between your legs, imagining you have a vagina for a sexual kick. Oh, there was nothing sexual about that. Yeah, right. Bloody absolute liars.
My porn addiction turned me into a sissy boy and a cross-dresser.
But what I want to let you know is, I'm a man.
What do you mean you a man?
Like what I said, I'm a man. You can tell, sweetheart.
No, I can't tell.
You can tell.
I can tell.
You can tell.
I can tell.
That is nuts. What you see the that's hysterical to me. That's hysterical to me. Let's get into it.
Born a man.
Okay, so today's episode will be transgender people, the debate and the agenda around them. Is there something we're missing? Is it a Trojan horse? Are we over-sexualizing children, indoctrinizing children into these thoughts and ways of thinking by introducing these topics? Let's get into it and discuss the whole matter. I didn't know where to start. And I thought to myself, let me start with this factoid that I always discuss and bring up when discussing the transgender topic with friends and amongst colleagues. And I thought I'd leave you with this video.
Is that if you have a patient with autism, you should consider evaluating them for gender identity issues. And if you have a patient who's got gender identity issues, you should evaluate them for autism traits.
So, as you can tell from this video, there's a clear link between ASD and transgender gender dysphoria, and that's to do with the mentalization. Mentalization is understanding your internal world, your internal thoughts and feelings, and that's also linked to social cues. Now, a lot of people, especially a lot of people watching this video, probably never had that worry, or maybe they did, but for the vast majority of people, they don't have these cues. They don't worry about whether they're male or female, do they fit into these roles, because it's something that you just predispose and fully understand by observing and watching the world, and you quickly internalize it, and you don't have the same mentalization issues that someone who is on the ASD spectrum disorder spectrum would have.
So this is what leads to a lot of things like social difficulties, because they're not really aware of sometimes what they're feeling or experiencing on the inside. And my work with people on the autism spectrum has made me sort of realize how much they look at certain things like social interactions, like mathematical problems, as opposed to sort of empathically or being able to mentalize and sort of understand it intrinsically. And what we kind of know about gender identity is, if you kind of think about it, gender identity is internally determined, right? Especially when we're talking about gender identity variance. So there are certain physical features that I have that may make me a man, but my sense of being a man is sort of determined somewhat internally. There's an external component and there's an internal component.
I bring that up to say this. It's important to bring these things up because we don't want to simplify and minimalize transgender people and gender dysphoria as just a problem of your thought, just a way you've been thought and you've been indoctrinated into this. There's clear psychological issues that are linked to this. And when it causes mental distress, it can cause people to be suicidal, depressed, and anxious. Something Jordan Peterson said, however.
Now it's become verboten to even suggest such a thing. Oh, there's nothing sexual about this. It's like, yeah, right. You're dressing up in lingerie before your mirror at home, tucking your dick between your legs, imagining you have a vagina for a sexual kick. Oh, there was nothing sexual about that. Absolute liars. Then you have the kids who don't fit in on the gender front. That's a different pathway. But with them, if you leave them alone, so do no harm, leave them alone, 90% of them accept their body, their sex, by age 18 or 19. And 80% of them are gay. So what that also means is, and the gay community is going to wake up to this sooner or later, is that most of the kids being sterilized and mutilated are gay, 80% of them. So I don't see how the LGBT alliance is going to hold up under that sort of reality. That's for sure, man.
When people who fit into this category of having the mentalization issues resulting from their ASD and have gender dysphoria, when they are allowed to develop and grow into adults, they came out as mostly just gay men or lesbian women. And he did go on further to explain that this may be an issue rising in the future, that are we oversubscribing, are we over pushing this transgender transitioning into males and females due to a adolescent issue. And it's something that I found even more interesting is that the LGBTQ community will have a pushback to this when they find that this is something that's been happening. And again, these are studies and these are things that are very, very new. So it leaves us all a bit shaky and go, whoa, it doesn't feel safe enough to be brought in front of kids. Now, one thing I will say is that the transgender discussion and debate has been going on for years, but the way it's been pushed and put into the forefront is something that is new. And I think that's a lot of what Jordan Peterson is pushing back against, and saying that as this is growing, so will the contest from its allies as well. However, again, there's the pronouns issues that Jordan Peterson said in this same interview with Joe Rogan, where he discusses the linguistic control that is going on.
And I thought, well, no, that's not acceptable. It's one thing to put limits on what a person can't say, like say with hate speech laws, which I also don't agree with, by the way, but that's a different argument. I think it's a narrower argument. But to compel me to use a certain content when I'm formulating my thoughts or my actions under threat of legislative action, I thought, no, what's happened there is the government has introduced compelled speech legislation into the private sphere. It's never happened in the history of English common law. And so I said, there's no way I'm abiding by that. I don't care what your damn rationale is. We're compassionate. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're playing this radical collectivist left-wing game. You're trying to gain linguistic supremacy in the area of public discourse. You're doing that using compassion as a guise, and you're pulling the wool over people's eyes.
And why I brought this up and why I think it's so important to discuss and touch upon this is that when people are controlling the things you can and can't say, that is where the think police come from. 1984 George Orwell, where you are being controlled in so many different ways, where you're control of your thoughts, control of the way you think, controls your mind. And when you control someone's mind, you have control over their autonomy. Now, you can never control someone's subconscious because you don't have access to that. But when you're in charge of the way they speak through the linguistic control, the way they think through controlling and altering the way you're thinking, having to change how you're saying things and what is now deemed acceptable, you do have control over the mind. You do have some control over their autonomy. The only thing I'd say as a pushback to what Jordan Peterson said is that throughout society, as we evolve and develop and information is becoming more and more readily available, we are constantly altering what is acceptable and unacceptable. For example, I didn't know, genuinely, that coolie was an offensive term. It is an offensive term. And as of going forward, I don't use the term coolie too often. And again, it's the same with half caste, quarter caste, these different terms, colored people, the P word in relation to people from Pakistan, things that you didn't know were unacceptable when you were younger. You learn they are unacceptable and you no longer use them. However, it does feel very interesting in this sense, since post-pandemic, that there's been a greater push and it's been almost accelerated since the post-pandemic. And maybe that's a big reason behind the pushback. However, we're going to explore further. When I was doing this video and preparing for it and writing the script down for it, I wasn't sure where to begin. So I thought I'd start with that anecdote and I thought I'd start with that interesting fact if you found it interesting. However, a big thing for me was what brought this conversation to the forefront so much, because this wasn't something that we were talking about 6-7 years ago as much as we are today. It's not in the public forum as much as it was today, even though you had the Jerry Springer and the Murray show clips of them saying, I'm a man, and then the guy trying to beat them up or saying he accepts it. There's nothing wrong with that. However, it's been brought to the forefront recently. But what was all our introductions to it? And I thought I'd start with a little story time, my own introduction to transgender people. And where did it start? Do you lot remember Sex Extra? Sex Extra was a late night show, a naughty show that we should have never been watching as kids. And that was the first place I ever saw a transgender person. It was a transgender male. He's actually, well, the transgender male is very famous. Don't know his name. I'll put a picture here. And I remember thinking, whoa, this is so damn weird. This is so damn strange. I didn't know because my naive mind, I don't even know if I was in year 7 or if it was in year 8, but I was young. Guys, I was motherfucking young. And I thought he was born like that. No kidding. I thought he was born like that. So I was weirded out by this. As the show went on, I realized that he had been reassigned that gender, and that wasn't his original gender at birth. And all of a sudden I was introduced to this very new world, I would say. My first introduction to a transgender woman. The mandem are gonna have a field day for this one. So it was through porn. But I didn't go out searching for it. Again, it was something that the video just said, guy getting head in the park. So I clicked on it and I'm like, cool, what's this? And then they were just lip syncing. It was a part 1. They were just lip syncing. There was hand motion going down in both parts. So I'm thinking, this is odd. So my curious mind, it ends and nothing's happened. They're just lips and I'm like, okay, let me go find part 2. Look for part 2. It was on something called XTube. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was something called XTube. And I was going searching for it again and I found the video and then boom. I saw my first ever transgender woman and I was like, whoa. That brings me to this part. That a lot of people, there seems to be this upcurrent going on where people are claiming there's an indoctrination into transgenderism and reassignment of your gender through porn. This porn called hypnosis porn. Hypnosis cis femdom porn. Check this video out.
And, I have personally been somewhat mocked for the suggestion that this is having a powerful impact on men. However, trans activists themselves will say things like it influenced them. There's a famous academic who wrote a book in 2019. His name is Andrea Long-Chu, and the name of his book is Females. And in that book, he explicitly states that sissy porn and hypnosis made him start identifying as transgender. So what this incorporates is, as you might imagine, in the hypnosis style, things like repeated mantras, counting down, and probably some of the worst, most regressive stereotypes about women that you can possibly imagine. The speaker will say to the listener or viewer, you are a dumb bimbo slut. You want to be a girl. You want to be a bimbo. Just all of that sort of terrible, insulting, degrading terminology and language, which is part of the point. It's part of the thrill. It's that it's taboo, that it's degrading, that's humiliating.
Yeah. Weird, isn't it? Really, really weird. I tried to go on some Reddit pages and see what this was about, and it just seemed really, really strange, really odd and peculiar. And the studies behind it, again, there seems to be a lot of anecdotes. There seems to be a lot of people supporting that this is something that's going on and they are being made to feel that they are being pushed into this agenda. However, I will say one thing is that might be conflating the issue. The studies behind it seem to be showing a relationship, not a causation, which I would again challenge. There is an extensive program that you have to go through an extensive program that you have to go through in order to have your gender reassigned. So I don't know if this is anecdotal, if this is a new trend that needs to be studied, or it's something just by coincidence. However, it links to something that I do think is interesting and does need to be pushed going forward, that this is not stuff that should be pushed to children. Their minds are still being developed. Now, a lot of people might see those videos and think, how are you being converted to another gender through porn? However, what I'd say is when your mind is underdeveloped and you're going through stress and different hormones and understanding your body, and like Jordan Peterson said in that clip, when you are an outsider and you're given this nugget of feeling accepted in a different community, it can be very enticing for a young person. And another big aspect of this, another interesting point of this, is that the understanding of gender and sex. Now, sex is something that is your biology, it's something that you are born into, and gender is the role in which you manifest. Check this video out from a neuropsychologist who defines it better than I just did.
A common misconception people often hold is the belief that gender is equal to biological sex. This is simply not the case. Gender is the cultural roles one adopts that is often representative of their biological sex. Gender is also a psychological phenomenon that changes within and between cultures. Biologists and anthropologists agree that biological sex and gender share a relationship, but this relationship ends when one's internal biology counters that cultural expectation. For example, some individuals may experience what's known as gender dysphoria. This is where one's gender is unrelated to one's biological sex. So there's a mismatch between one's sex and one's gender. In simple terms, most cases of gender dysphoria work like this. One may be born with one biological sex, but their brain is more like the opposite sex. Sadly, these differences in gender have been misunderstood both inside and outside of the scientific community.
Now, this is something that I had found out years ago, and it was very interesting that your gender and your sex are very different and your biology is different, and that it's why a lot of people in the transgender community want to be identified as a woman or as a man. But my problem is, and what I have a pushback is that it's funny that the same mainstream narrative of understanding and accepting transgender women, transgender men as men and women, push back against men being men, saying this is chauvinistic, macho, but you celebrate transgender men for being strong, powerful. The same agenda that pushes women to be stronger, removing them of their femininity, looking down upon them for being feminine, accepts and celebrates transgender women for being feminine, for being in their femininity, and celebrates their beauty. But when you do it for a woman, it's cheapening them. When you celebrate a man's strength, it's toxic masculinity. To me, it's very odd. It's very uncomfortable. And it's what leads me to think is this a Trojan horse? I'm not saying anything against transgender people, but it just requires and leaves me questioning this stuff a lot more. However, what are the lives of these people in the transgender community? What's it like dating them? So here's a series of videos. I hope you enjoy it.
I have found it definitely hard to date as a trans woman. Guys, most of the time, I don't think is ready to put that out there in the world where it's something that they see or their family sees as taboo or something that's non-traditional, and it's been really hard to go through that. My family reacted to the relationship, I think, more cautious than anything from what I've dealt with in the past. Relationships with abuse and trauma, they were scared, they were nervous, they saw his pictures, they were like, oh God, a tatted up, biker. They were like, Cassidy, what are you doing? And I was like, no, like you have to meet him, like you have to, see him and feel his energy.
Cassidy's changed my life for the better because she is slowly helping remove the hate that's been instilled in me since a kid.
Just knowing that I have somebody that fully supports me, no matter what I do, he's always there for me.
Our message is, don't be scared to embrace who you love. Because if I was still scared to let it out to this world, I would be hiding everything that is so beautiful about us. But instead, I let it out there.
Throughout our hardships and throughout us being judged so much in our relationships, we want to show that it's still possible to live a happy relationship and not even care about what people think.
Now, I'm not gonna lie. Guys, I'm gonna keep it real. I try to present these as best as I can. I do think there's a little bit of zest going on. There's a bit of zestiness going on, but it was interesting to see that. It was interesting to see how people related to their partners when they were from who were transgender. It was interesting to see their interactions, how they navigate society. And I'm going to keep it so real with you guys. There's a part of me that wants to make a bunch of jokes about it, but there's a part of me that is also highly empathetic towards them, because I did, when you look at them and I saw them discussing it, I did see people who were fighting against such social norms, who were such outsiders to society, who were just trying to be accepted and trying to have a normal life. I had a great deal of empathy, not just for the males in those situations, but also the transgender people in those situations. Yeah, I was a bit uncomfortable by the hench guy to the audio guys. It's the last guy who was calling himself, I am an alpha male, I'm not gay, da 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 da. It was a bit like, bro, if you have to say it so many times, maybe you are. It's like me looking in the mirror and saying, I'm not toxic, I'm not toxic. It's like, if you have to tell yourself so many times, maybe you're a little bit toxic. But that being said, I could see the stress in their faces sometimes, especially that last guy. I can see the anxiety in his face, especially that last guy. And it did make me realize that in general, I think we should be a lot more kinder to marginalized groups and how we discuss them. And on top of that, it did leave me thinking, are they gay? I did have that question. Let's be real. Let's be real. Let's have the honest discussion. Are you gay if you are dating someone from the transgender community? Now, interesting factoid here.
Is this a new category of sexual orientation? Are these people closer to gay people or are they closer to straight people?
Great question. And so I can answer the second part of that question. They are very close to straight people. They're not at all gay. Guys who get into she-males. So if we bring these guys in the lab and we show them pornography featuring just women, and the kind that we use in this situation is two women having sex with each other, female porn, and male porn. Those are the best kind of stimuli, because if somebody gets aroused, there's no ambiguity about who they're getting aroused by. Guys who are into she-males get aroused to the females, but not the males. But they get slightly more aroused to videos of two she-males getting it on.
It literally, the scientists said, they did a whole study, in Sweden or one of those crazy freaky deaky countries, where they were like that men got most excited by a big penis and a big pair of boobs. Because that, in the core of the brain, you want the big boobs, obviously we know. And why? And do you know why? Actually, big boobs, why we're attracted to big boobs and a big butt. Do you know the scientific reason for that?
I didn't know there was one. I enjoy nice big breasts, but I would probably fancy myself an ass guy, but I like both.
Okay, here's what it is. So the reason why, the reason why scientists say you like men, we like big boobs and a big butt, wide hips, is the boobs. One is because what we're subconsciously Neanderthal brain seeing, baby has milk. Our babies will have milk to feed off, big breasts, and comfortable pillow to lay on. Now, butt, hips, wide birthing canal gives us subconsciously our baby's chance, the best chance of survival. So we associate the butt with the hips. That's the reason why, and that's also the reason why women like.
This all makes sense.
Big guys, why they like attracted to a taller guys, because in her brain,
safety.
She's saying he can guard me from animals.
He can go out and hunt.
He can go out and hunt, and that's also why men are attracted to more physical attributes and beauty, and women aren't, because what a woman needs is a man who's all they really care about is if they're smart or not, because you have to, again, we live in a different world now, but this is Neanderthal brain that we still have, are connected to. The man has to be smarter. That's why they're less about physical qualities, because you have to be cunning to go out and hunt and find food and bring it back. Where the woman is not going out and doing that, so we don't care if she's smart or not. We just need them big old titties for our baby's breast milk,
and the big cock,
and a big cock, and a nice wide birthing canal.
So I find it interesting, the data and the science behind it. I'm not gonna lie, one of those videos was a bit iffy for me, because I'm like, sounds like you just like transgender women. However, there is some data behind it, and they are female presenting. And something it made me realize was this video from Sharp. Well, no jumper, Shark Tank.
Double standard. Double standard.
Went back to what Flacco
That is a little strange.
So what does
That's
that mean?
a little freaky.
Because what he was saying earlier was like that you're bisexual. I guess that is what you are, but you have a limitation.
That's a good way to describe it. That's a good way to describe it. Like you bisexual.
And it hit me. It hit me, and it made me think of it from a different angle. Now, these guys that date transgender women, they're not traditionally straight. Let's call it what it is. Let's call it what it is. However, that maybe they are straight with bi leanings, like Sharp said, because you are dating someone who's female presenting at the very least. And it's the same with women. If you would date guys, let's be real with it. A lot of us, our partners or ex-partners or future partners, they probably watch a lot of lesbian porn. Now, you may think, no, mine doesn't. But statistically speaking, it's the most popular porn, and women watch it more than straight porn. And if they watch that and they get off to that, does that make them bi? Okay, some of you may say, nah, but they're just watching it. However, some women have had experiences. Does that make them bi? And that's why I took what Sharp said as interesting. Straight with bi leanings. Zesty, man, then run the jokes that you want. But I thought that might be a more better way to look at it. And I thought there was maybe a little bit of a contradiction going on when you are analyzing it from the perspective of when women do these things, it's seen as cool, even sexy. When guys do it, it's like, ugh. However, to recategorize it, and again, I get what you lot are saying. We all kind of are annoyed by the amount of new words, they, she, he, she with an X, woman with an X, the amount of new terms that we have. But I think maybe recategorizing it, because you could see the distress in some of their faces. You could see the ostracization from some of their faces. And as a guy that's been ostracized himself, it's never nice, no matter what side you're on. Maybe recategorizing it would be better off for society. Jokingly, I will say it's a zesty world, but we are in a brave new world. And similar to me re-understanding what's offensive and not offensive, let's try to understand what's offensive to people and what is fair to people, as zesty as it is. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. But yeah, straight with bi leanings. I like that one. And this is just something that I found as well, that I found kind of interesting, looking into this, was that a lot of straight women have no sexual preference to porn. So it's either lesbian porn and everything else is kind of meh to them. Even gay porn, which I found interesting, while men preferred, obviously, straight porn, lesbian porn, transgender porn. And then gay men preferred, and this is a very interesting part, transgender male porn. So transgender male women who used to be men, and obviously gay porn. And that's bi men as well. So that's what they liked. And also gay women liked transgender males. They tend to be more attracted to transgender males, and gay porn as well, lesbian porn for them. I found that quite interesting. I found that quite fascinating. And I was like, wow, that's quite interesting. I hope you enjoyed that too. I'll leave a little clip for you.
Women into the lab, and we show them the same kinds of stimuli. 2 men having sex, 2 women having sex. Straight women show an indifferent pattern of genital arousal. They get equally aroused by both, and they say they get equally aroused by both. Now, they don't get that aroused psychologically. Straight women do not get as aroused to watching either kinds of erotic stimuli that I just mentioned as either straight men do or gay men do. But it is interesting that they seem to show this flat pattern. Lesbians, in contrast, do show both a genital preference and a subjective preference for female stimuli.
I believe, and I would say, that the problem that I think a lot of people find with the transgender debate and the LGBTQ debate generally is its pushing. It's how it's been pushed onto children. It's this understanding that women and men are no longer seen as in their biological sexes, and there's transgender women are trying to fit into the women category, and transgender males are trying to fit into the male category. However, what I would say to that is that maybe we do have to understand gender and sex differently and understand those roles. But at the same time, in that same breath, is that we can't tear down biological women for being in their feminine nature, being in their feminine energy, then celebrate transgender women who were originally men, let's be real, for being feminine. That's hypocritical. And the same for transgender men, tearing down men for being alpha males, for being strong, tearing them down and calling them toxic, and then building up transgender males who were originally women before. Those are the problems that we have with the narrative, and we can feel the change. Cat Williams said this:
anytime you see them telling you something you can't believe, just understand it's a play.
If it doesn't make sense and it seems to fly in the face of common sense, it's a play. And that's where I have the idea, is this a Trojan horse? Is there something secretly going on behind the scenes? Is this being used as a way to introduce something even more radical? For example, acceptance or passes for people who have pedophilic natures, maybe disguising it as a mental illness. Now, I want to say this very, very, very clearly. There is no correlation between pedophilia and transgender people and the LGBTQ community. There is no correlation. I'm not trying to make that. I'm trying to just say that, is this being used as a way to further push us away from some sort of reality and straightforward discourse? A discourse that has fairness and understanding on both sides. It seems that we're being rammed down the face with a certain discourse, and any sort of pushback is you're made to feel as if you're against equality. And I don't think anyone's against equality. I think people are against being pushed and forced into things. And I think just to end this debate is that it being pushed and introduced to children, even though generally you can, as a parent, opt for your child to be removed from these kind of discussions in the classes, I think it's where it leaves a lot of us uncomfortable. And it's even the fact that you have to opt out. You're going to be made to feel that, again, you're against equality. Perhaps you're just worried about your child being indoctrinated into something that even you yourself doesn't fully understand. And I think that's more of an appropriate way of looking at it, as opposed to you're against equality, you're against progressiveness. Perhaps we're just all a little confused and want to take our time to understand this. And even the people that are pro-trans people, pro-LGBTQ community, and use a lot of data and research behind them, have to admit that some of that data and research itself are not longitude studies, sometimes don't show causation as opposed to correlation. They themselves have dark figures, have poor sample size, things that are more questionable. We should take our time before we judge. Guys, thank you for this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. I hope to hear from you again. I really enjoyed it. I'm really enjoying making these for you. I do think they're getting better, but anything that you think it needs improving, please let me know. Oh, I'm out.